Okay, so dietary strategies to help reduce your risk of breast cancer. Let's talk about it. There is, I don't know about you, but I feel like more and more people that I know of that are around my age, that are younger and younger, are being diagnosed with breast cancer. And it's a fascinating topic. It's really, really interesting, especially as you dive deep into, what is it that we can do? You want to, when my husband had his stroke, the first question was, okay, like something was going on in his body, but is there anything that we can do, right, to prevent this from happening again? And when it comes to cancer, it's while it's not as common as heart disease, you're actually 4 times more likely to die from heart disease or to be diagnosed with heart disease. It still is the most common cancer affected by women, right? So it's something that we all should really spend the time to understand a little bit more, because if you just spent the time to make the changes I'm going to talk about now, even if you don't have any sign of breast cancer, you could significantly minimize your risk. And for me, that's worth it. Like, I would much rather know now than it be too late. So I have a gift for you at the very end of this, that I want to serve you. I want to help you. And I have a recipe book with 40 different plant-based recipes that if you stay until the very, very, very end, which should only be about an hour, that I'll be able to gift you that book. But I just want to give you a little bit of incentive to listen until the end. Also, I know, like, I'm going to dive deep and serve you. My goal of this presentation is truly, honestly, to serve you and give you all the information possible to help you on your way. But if you feel like you can't do it alone and you need a little bit of help, I will be explaining my program to you at the very end if you feel like you need it, right? If you don't feel like you can do this on your own. And so for just listening to it, hearing me out, you'll get that free gift at the very end. Okay. So a major source of what I am using for this presentation is from the book called Breast, the Owner's Manual. I highly suggest this book if you happen to have breast cancer, if you have just been diagnosed, if you've had breast cancer in the past, if you're worried about getting breast cancer. This book is amazing. Dr. Christy Funk is a breast surgeon that has done so much research in this field just to bring all this research to light as well. I love listening to her speak. She has probably one of the most hilarious stories of, she was learning along the way. She used to tell people, don't eat soy. That's terrible for you, right? She used to feed her kids salami and ham sandwich, like all of these things, because she didn't know better. And when you know better, you do better. And so once she actually dived into the research and realized that she had been misinformed about soy, that she had been misinformed about carbs, right? That really carbs aren't that bad for you. And that truthfully, we shouldn't be so focused on protein, that maybe we should be focused more on getting more of those antioxidants inside your body, right? It transformed the way that she not only feeds herself, but her kids. And I believe that this information will transform the way that you act once you know. Again, when you know better, you'll do better. So what is the current state of breast cancer? How often does it happen? Is this something that we should be worrying about? Well, it is the top malignant tumor with 2.3 million new cases and 680,000 deaths in 2019, right? It's continuing to grow over the last 4 decades. It has continued to grow. And, it accounts for 12% of all new cancer cases worldwide, and it is the most common cancer globally. The most significant risk factor for breast cancer is being a woman, is being assigned a female at birth. And if you are a man, you still actually do have a risk of getting breast cancer. You do have breast tissue. It's just not as high. 80% of women diagnosed have no family history, right? This is important. 80% of women diagnosed with breast cancer have no family history. So when you see all of these women who are getting diagnosed younger and younger, it really is important to recognize that it's not just genetic. That most of the time, it is not genetic at all, right? That 80% of the time, there's no history, family history. A man's lifetime risk is 1 in 833, and a woman's lifetime risk is actually 1 in 8, right? So what does that mean? What does lifetime risk mean? I mean, obviously, when you're younger, in your 30s, you only have a risk of about 1 in 200. In your 40s, you have a risk of 1 in 63. Do you see that huge jump in your 40s? And 40s and 50s, right? In your 50s, it's 1 in 41. In your 60s, 1 in 28, in your 70s, 1 in 24. And when you combine everything together, your whole entire lifetime risk, 1 in 8. So you can see that it is very common. Now, there are individuals that there's pretty much nothing you could do that you would be diagnosed with breast cancer because of genes, a genetic issue, that you could do everything perfect and everything right. So I don't want you to go through this presentation if you were, one of those and realize like, oh, this is all me. No guilt, no shame attached to this at all. There's about 5 to 10% of breast cancers that really there's not a lot you could do. Okay, so keep that in mind to just empower you. Black women are the highest of any racial ethnic group to die from breast cancer. So 1 in 5 Black women diagnosed with breast cancer will die from it. And so that's also important to recognize that this information really needs to be spread to everyone, no matter your gender, your color, whatever it is. This is so key for all of us to know. Now, for those individuals, like the 10, even 15%, that there's pretty much nothing you could do. What about the rest of us? What about the rest of us who are diagnosed with breast cancer? Is it just bad luck, right? If it's not genes, and it really isn't just bad luck, what is it? What is it? Really, it all boils down to diet and lifestyle. That is huge. That really, it's been estimated anywhere between 50 to even up to 80% of cancers could be prevented with diet and lifestyle. And we see this when we study, we have these epidemiological studies where we see Asian immigrants who moved from their countries to LA or Hawaii, and they found that just moving to America doubled their risk of cancer than those who lived in the homeland, who stayed in their homeland. And that's because when they came to America, they started eating the Big Macs and had fries with that and eating all of the foods that we have, and it definitely increased their risk. So when it comes to breast cancer, it's important to know that it's undetectable for almost a decade. That many of you on this call could have cancer growing within you right now, and you just don't know it. It's undetectable. It's so small. In fact, the majority of us most likely do. Breast cancer, if you think about it, is usually detected when it's about 2.2 centimeters, which is about 2.2 billion cells. And by the time it takes for one cancerous cell to mutate, and then for that to divide, right, and then divide and divide, it takes anywhere between 8 to 10 years before it's discovered. So a lot of us on this call may have it, but it will never necessarily be discovered for another 8 to 10 years. And it's in this time period where your diet and lifestyle matters. And let me explain why. When it comes to cancer, there's the tumor initiation phase, right? This happens within minutes or hours. This is when we're exposed to carcinogenic compounds. We hear about all the time. We're buying cleaning products. We're trying to stay away from chemicals. We're trying not to, we're trying to buy organic, whatever it is that you're doing, because you're really wanting to decrease your exposure to carcinogenic compounds. And when we are exposed, whether on purpose or not, a lot of times our genes, our cells can mutate. And when this happens, again, it just starts the process. And when the tumor starts, there's a lot of things that are in your power. When it starts to form and grow, this is where kind of the hallmarks of cancer begin to be distinguished. And this is where you can pretty much turn cancer on or turn cancer off by your diet and by your lifestyle. When the tumor has progressed, it is at that point is when it's discovered. Now, after it is progressed, you can still make a huge difference by turning your diet on or off, but you're definitely you don't have as much control as you would in the formation phase. When it gets bigger, it gets harder to stop, right? The bigger and bigger. What's interesting when you look at cancer formation is in order for cancer to grow, these cells need nutrients, just like any other cells in our body. And so what they do is they basically emit hormones that tell your blood vessels to grow around the cancer. This is called angiogenesis, basically blood vessels forming around the cancer to give it the nutrients it needs to help grow. What is fascinating, and this is why it matters what you're eating, is not only are there anti-angiogenesis drugs that have been developed that basically tell your body when you take these drugs to stop forming those blood vessels, but certain plant foods do the same. they stop the formation of these blood vessels around the cancer to give the cancer the nutrients it needs to grow. This is why what you eat matters on a cellular level, because it can prevent this progression of that tumor. Now, once the tumor has metastasized, that means that it has moved to other tissues and it's rapidly growing. Not to say that what you're eating can stop it. It's so much harder to stop it at that point. And so it just gets harder and harder. So while many of you on this call have gone through breast cancer, there's still a lot you can do to prevent that from happening again. And if you've never had breast cancer, there's a good chance that at some point in your life, you or somewhere you were exposed to a carcinogenic compound and you have a tumor forming inside your body right now. Now, don't be scared. That doesn't mean you're going to get cancer. It just means that what you do in your lifestyle, what you eat, it matters in your risk later on in life. So significant lifestyle factors definitely impact your growth of cancer. So when it's in that formation phase, I talked about diet, right? Diet matters, but because especially when it comes to angiogenesis, the formation of those blood vessels. So eating a lot of plant foods is going to help, but also alcohol. Alcohol is not discussed as much as it should be. Alcohol is categorized as a group 1 carcinogen. So it's like you're throwing out, that carcinogen in your body over and over and over again. So if you're avoiding alcohol, that's going to be key to help prevent the growth of cancer. Exercise as well. So if you're not exercising, again, these are all the things that basically create this environment for cancer to thrive. And the lack of exercise, drinking alcohol, having a poor diet is going to create this environment for cancer to thrive. Obesity is another key factor. You are significantly at a higher risk of getting breast cancer by being obese, by being overweight. That's one of the highest risk factors. So the lower weight you are, the closer to your optimal body size, the lower your chances of getting cancer. Another thing that I could actually increase your risk of getting cancer is hormone replacement therapy, which is really popular right now. As you're kind of putting in more estrogen, you can increase your risk. Other environmental toxicities, right? If you're exposed over and over again to a certain environmental toxicity, even a perfect diet can't necessarily stop that. Emotional stress. It's amazing how stress plays such a big role in the formation of cancer. It definitely can turn the cancer, or create that environment for cancer to thrive. Fasting is interesting too, because when you fast, especially for over 24 hours, your body starts to kill off some of those cells, those cancer, or mutated cells. And so fasting can be key to help, prevent that cancer from forming. And sleep, it always goes back to sleep, right? Poor sleep is going to have a major impact on the breast cancer and its ability to grow. So we want to really attack all of these things. And today I'm going to talk a lot about specifically diet, but in general, that you should be sleeping better, reducing your stress, trying not to be exposed to too many toxic products. And if you are obese, that's important for you to really focus on losing the weight. And any type of exercise, even just walking, is key. Just walking can significantly reduce your risk. So, and if you're drinking alcohol, you should make it an effort to just completely stop. Like, especially if you've already had breast cancer, there's no benefit. It's just putting you at a higher risk. So try to completely stop. So I want you to look at that and think, what is it that you need to stop doing, or maybe start doing in order to not create this environment for cancer to thrive. So when it comes to diet, right, 80% of breast cancer is fueled by estrogen. So the more there is, the higher your risk. So why does that matter? How are you consuming estrogen, right? Like, how does this work? Well, certain animal-based products can increase IGF-1 levels, which can increase your cancer growth risk. And I'm going to go into detail about that a little later. Certain plant foods, like I just said before, can hinder angiogenesis, or the blood vessels from feeding cancer. Insulin sensitivity also matters. When it comes to insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance, you've probably heard this before. Most people get this wrong. You assume that not consuming sugar or starch is going to make you more insulin sensitive, right? In the sense of when you're not eating sugar or starch, your body's not having to produce the insulin, so you're in a better state. But truthfully, that's just addressing the symptom. That's not addressing the underlying issue. The underlying issue when it comes to insulin resistance is that saturated fat is gumming up the lock, so the insulin cannot unlock the door to let the glucose into the cells. That's the underlying issue, not just having the glucose in the cells, right? But actually the saturated fat that's blocking the lock. So the insulin can do its job properly. So it's really key when it comes to breast cancer and any type of cancers or just insulin resistance in general to keep your saturated fat low. And if you're unaware, what are the major sources of saturated fat? Honestly, cheese is the #1 source in the American diet. So cheese has any other type of dairy, butter is going to be next. So really trying to keep that low. And then after that is going to be red meat. So then free radical formation or oxidative stress, we'll talk about that a little bit deeper. I'm going to go into details of all these things so that you have a better idea. But again, there's more to it than just the food. You need that restorative sleep. You need to avoid the toxic substances. You need to eat a healthy diet. You need to really create these positive relationships in your life, to have physical activity, right? And stress management. When all of these things are in line, it makes it very, very difficult for cancer to thrive. And if you've been diagnosed with cancer, and if you think about when you were diagnosed and maybe 8 to 10 years before then, because that's when, the tumor started to form, some people can even pinpoint where one of these things was totally off, right? Where maybe they went through a really stressful situation or they weren't sleeping or whatever it is. Sometimes you can even pinpoint when that cancer started to grow. If you were to look back, 8 to 10 years before then. Now, again, what is oxidative stress and how does this play a role? I know we talk about it a lot. We talk about antioxidants, talk about oxidative stress. What is it? And how does oxidative stress create free radicals? Well, when we're often exposed to environmental pollutants, right? A poor diet can play a role. Smoking, excessive alcohol consumption, and certain medication, and then infections, inflammation. So what happens is when we are exposed to this type of oxidative stress, it creates what's called free radicals. And free radicals, they go around trying to steal an electron. They're an unpaired electron. They try to steal an electron from your body. And so they'll steal it from breast tissue. They'll steal it from your brain. They'll steal it from, all these different parts of your body. And when this happens a lot in your brain, you could be at a higher risk for dementia. When it happens a lot in your breast tissue, you're at a higher risk for breast cancer. So what's key in preventing that from happening is consuming enough antioxidants, right? Antioxidants neutralize these free radicals. And they do that by donating that electron without destabilizing themselves. So when an antioxidant gives that electron, an antioxidant isn't going to turn into cancer. It's not a cell that's going to be mutated and then turn into cancer. But when a breast cell is that electron is taken from them, then it can mutate and start the series into cancer growth, if that makes sense, right? So we want to consume as many antioxidants as possible to give our body a fighting chance. And plants contain 64 times more antioxidants than any other animal-based food out there. So we want to make it a priority to eat more plants. A dear friend of mine who was recently diagnosed with cancer was saying, I've just grown up with this mentality, like super fit, and I had protein. And I'm like, I know it's important, but really, what's happening when you're just eating protein? You're not eating these antioxidants. What's happening when you make that the center of each plate? You're not getting the antioxidants that are going to help fight the cancer that's growing in your body. So that's why it's key. And I'm not saying protein is something to be avoided. I'm just saying we want to shift our focus, because yes, protein can help us get fit. It can help us lose weight, but it's not going to help prevent cancer from growing inside your body like plants will. And so they need to be the center of your plate. Excessive, severe free radical damage to your organs leads to different types of cancer. And so again, we want to make sure that you're giving your body a fighting chance. And they even did this study. They even did a study where they gave individuals, the typical American breakfast, where they gave them eggs and bacon and pancakes and sausage, right? All the things that are at my hotel breakfast, right, that you go to in America. And then they measured the oxidative damage that was going on inside their body. Then they took another group of individuals, gave them the exact same breakfast, but with a cup of berries. So just adding the cup of berries, if you were to see the charts, basically there was a ton of oxidative stress in the body who ate the typical American breakfast. But the amazing thing is those who consumed the berries with that breakfast, it was neutral. They were able to neutralize the oxidative stress. That is so important to know, because remember that oxidative stress is going to put you at a higher risk of cancer. And so just adding the good foods to your diet makes a huge difference on your long-term health. Adding in, right? Adding as much as you can. But what other foods should you be adding in besides berries? What other foods do you need to make a priority to basically beat cancer like you mean it, right? I want you, if you really, really want to beat cancer, eat like you mean it. And how do you eat like you mean it? Well, you add in curcumin, right? Or turmeric, which is a spice that's been known to fight cancer. And it's really easy. You just add it with a little bit of black pepper. It increases the absorption rate in your body, and it is a cancer fighting machine. Green tea has also been found to be beneficial in the fight against cancer. Tomatoes, red grapes, right? Or red grapes have resveratrol, which has been so key, especially for brain health. Omega-3 fatty acids, berries, right? Tomatoes, all of these foods, and soy, which I'm going to go into detail a little bit later, and apples and oranges. The phrase eat an apple a day to keep the doctor away it really should be eat an apple a day to keep cancer away. There have been so many studies, especially when it comes to breast cancer, that eating just an apple a day, including the skin is key, that it is significantly helpful in reducing your risk of breast cancer. So just eating an apple a day to keep breast cancer at bay. Oranges are key. Oranges will also help keep those arteries nice and open and flexible. Tomatoes are good not only for breast cancer, but prostate cancer. Tomatoes have been shown that lycopene, right, the phytonutrient, is key. And cooked tomatoes are even better. They're higher in lycopene. So tomato sauce, that's even better for you. So it's really key that we eat like we mean it. Get those berries in every day, right? Really try to fight cancer with plants. And any plant, I know some, like I said here, obviously have a bigger impact, but honestly, any type of plant is going to be beneficial in some way, because at least it will have antioxidants. Now, I told you I'd talk a little bit more about IGF-1. IGF-1, it plays a huge role in cancer growth. Now, this is also why when you're consuming a high protein diet, your body, right, our brain stimulates our liver to produce IGF-1 when we eat animal-based proteins, which means you can grow muscles. Like if you're eating more animal-based protein, it is very effective, which is great, right? Not so great when it comes to cancer. IGF-1's main mission is to stimulate growth, right? Which is helpful when a child is trying to mature to adulthood. That's why IGF-1 is in milk, especially in dairy milk, again, which is helpful to help children grow to adulthood. But it also helps facilitate cell turnover, 50 billion cells daily, and excessive IGF-1 is where it can promote cancerous cells to grow as well. So basically, yes, it's going to help your muscles grow, but it's also going to tell those cancers to grow. And we want to keep IGF-1 lower. There's an interesting fact, though, about people who have what's called Laron syndrome, and their body can't even produce IGF-1. It's part of it. They're very small and short. They can't grow. Their body just doesn't even produce IGF-1, so it makes it they're shorter. However, what's fascinating about them is that they do not have any incidences of cancer or type 2 diabetes. Like the IGF-1 is key in cancer growth and type 2 diabetes. And the more animal-based proteins you're eating, the more your brain stimulates your liver to produce IGF-1, right? So it's really important to keep that in mind. IGF-1, when you combine it with oxidative stress, then it's even worse, right? A study of 6,381 adults over 50 years old were followed for 18 years and found that the higher animal protein consumption compared to low protein consumers led to a 430% increase in cancer mortality. Like, whoa, 430% increase in cancer mortality. and a 7,300% increase in diabetes. So those two things, when it comes to cancer and diabetes, and they didn't even mention heart disease, but clearly the more animal protein, the higher animal protein consumption, the higher your risk in those two things. Now, the World Health Organization and the IARC are the ones who have studied a lot of different compounds in our diet, right? Whether it's and as well as chemicals. In fact, if you go on the World Health Organization list, it's kind of fun to just read through, like, what are all the chemicals that have been categorized as carcinogens, and what's their stance on animal-based protein and cancer? Well, when it comes to it, again, if you look on the group one, so group one, they've categorized all these chemicals and food substances, and group one means it is known to cause cancer. Like, it has been proven, study after study after study, is known to cause cancer. Group 2A is a probable cause of cancer. And if you were to just go on and read the list, there's a lot of chemicals that, like, I've never even heard of. But a couple of things you're going to recognize. You're going to recognize processed meats are on there. You're going to recognize alcohol is also on there. Alcohol is known to cause cancer. And you also recognize some birth control medication on there as well, which is interesting. But when it comes to processed meats, like, there's no question about it. Study after study after study has shown that they are known to cause cancer. That includes salami, bacon, sausages, hot dogs, even deli meats. And why? Why is it? And I'm going to talk about this in just a second. I will go into, on a cellular level, what is happening when we are processing meats that is producing this carcinogenic compounds that are just as severe as other chemicals out there that we're avoiding. Yet it's so common to just go to the grocery store, get your kids some hot dogs. Everyone loves bacon, right? Salami, we don't even think about it. But if you're exposing yourself, on a regular basis to these compounds, you're putting yourself at a significantly higher risk. And not only with breast cancer, but especially with colon cancer and many other things. A friend of mine recently found some cancerous cells in her colon and asked her doctor, is there anything I could have done to avoid it? And her doctor's like, no, not at all. But that's not the truth. Like, that is not the truth. If you're eating bacon every day, I'm sorry, you are putting yourself at a higher risk of cancer. You cannot deny the research when it comes to that. Now, what about red meat? Red meat is a group 2A, which means that it has been given that classification of a probable cause of cancer. It's not as strong as processed meats, but red meat includes pork, beef, lamb, right? And so it doesn't mean you can never, ever eat these things ever again. It just means to, like, really be aware of how often you're exposing yourself. Just like if you knew, like, aflatoxin, right? Or asbestos. If you knew asbestos was in your house, wouldn't you be kind of terrified? But we're not so terrified if bacon's in our house, yet they're in the same group. Shouldn't we really just be more mindful of that, right? And try to minimize our risk. Now, what is the impact of meat on breast cancer in general? About 193 postmenopausal women were followed for almost a decade and had a 25% increase in breast cancer in those who consumed red and processed meat. So does it mean you're going to die? No, it's a 25% increase. But if you can prevent that, why wouldn't you? Especially right now, if you don't even have cancer. If you knew that you could prevent a future cancer episode, wouldn't you do it just by avoiding processed meats? Like, maybe not eating a turkey sandwich every day for lunch? Like, would you do it? Yeah, totally. I would. It's terrible what you have to go through. I know many of you on here have gone through breast cancer, and it's a terrible process. So just by avoiding those things now, you can significantly reduce your risk. The more you know, again, the better you do. Now, what about if you were like me? I used to be the type of person that loved meat well done, right? Oh, I hated it rare, grossed me out. I actually like it a little more rare now if I ever eat it, which is very rare if ever. But in general, if you like your meat well done, you're putting yourself at a higher risk of cancer, because cooking meat, any type of meat, this could be chicken, this could be red meat, any type of meat, but especially hamburger, bacon, steak, all of that. When it's well done, it produces what's called HCAs and PAHs, which are carcinogenic compounds. And it's what you'll learn how to, decrease your exposure if you like eating meat in just a second. I'll explain the better ways to cook your meat. But in general, note that this study didn't even compare those who don't eat meat at all, but they said that those who are regularly eating hamburgers have a 54 increased risk, bacon, a 64 increased risk, Steak, 121% increased risk. And if you're eating all three regularly, you have a 362% increased risk on breast cancer, right? So it's so important that you really take this to heart and you minimize your exposure. Now, what about, what about chicken? Is chicken safe? Can I eat chicken every day? Let's talk about chicken. Chicken, grilling and cooking chicken produces a different type of harmful byproduct. So it's called PhIP, right? And this is key because a lot of people feel like they're eating healthy, but they have high estrogen levels. And this could be why. It could be because you're eating a lot of chicken, because when it's cooked, it produces this PhIP, which powers estrogen to fuel breast cancer. So this is something that we want to be more aware of. In the UK Women's Cohort Study, 35,000 women were followed for 8 years, and 1,850 subsequent breast cancers were discovered. And so what they found is compared to no meat eaters, right? There was a 41% increase with red meat, right? A 39% increase with processed meat, and a 22% increase with chicken. So obviously we want to avoid, red meat, number one, 41% risk, right? Processed meat, 39%. And then chicken, still, it's increasing your risk. Maybe not to the same extent, but it's not safe. What's completely safe is no meat at all, honestly. You can still get your protein without eating meat. 34% reduction in breast cancer cases were given to vegans compared to every other eating style. Even a flexitarian or someone who eats meat sparingly, there's no greater reduction in breast cancer rates than if you're following a vegan diet, period. And they found this in the Adventist Health Study, where over 69,000 people were followed for 4 years and they saw basically 2,939 cases of cancer develop. And within that, the meat group, the vegan group, the pesco-vegetarian, the lacto, all of them, again, those who were vegan had the lowest risk. So is there an elevated risk with eating plant-based proteins? What about that? If there is still a risk with chicken, what about plant-based proteins? And no, nope, not at all. There is no risk in breast cancer. In fact, it's quite the opposite. In just 2 weeks of consuming a whole food plant-based eating and daily exercise, you can actually turn your body into a cancer-fighting machine. A cancer-fighting machine. So if you are 70 years old and you ate a totally different way your whole entire life, and you were just diagnosed with cancer, and if we were to tell you, that's okay, I get it, but just try eating plant-based, let's just see how things go, without even losing weight, without really making any other changes besides just exercise and eating whole food plant-based, they were able to turn their body into a cancer-fighting machine. This particular study was called the Pritikin Plan, and they basically put individuals who had been diagnosed with cancer on a low-fat diet with high fiber, whole food plant-based, and daily exercise. And they found a significant reduction in IGF-1 levels in estrogen, right? With or without hormone replacement therapy, and insulin. And then there was a significant increase in the IGF binding proteins, basically that's going to help reduce your risk of cancer. In fact, they even took their blood and they put it on a petri dish with cancer cells. And the amount of apoptosis, which is cancer cell death from blood of just eating whole food plant-based for just 2 weeks, was insane. You can compare one petri dish to the other, that there was so much apoptosis, so much cancer cell death in the group that is eating all of these plants, using all these antioxidants, and not exposing themselves to all these animal-based proteins. It makes a huge difference. You're never too young, to turn your body and your blood into a cancer-fighting machine. Now, let's talk about the specific foods that have been shown to be beneficial. Christy Funk, in her book, Breasts, she talked about how for, I think it was 18 years, as a breast surgeon, she told people over and over, avoid soy, don't eat soy, because that was just the general thought. But it wasn't until she started writing her book and dived deep into the research that she was like, oh my gosh, I was wrong. It's one of the biggest myths out there, is to avoid soy-based foods when it comes to cancer risk, right? There is not one single human study that has shown that eating soy increases your risk of breast cancer, period. Not one study, zero. In fact, it's quite the opposite. There's so much research that shows that even eating 2 to 3 servings of soy a day is going to significantly decrease your risk, whether you've had breast cancer before or you're worried about getting it in the future. Soy literally is your breast friend. And it's because of these isoflavones, right? That mimic estrogen, but what they do is they can mimic it if you have too much estrogen, so preventing your body from having too much estrogen, and they can and go the opposite way if you don't have enough, right? They're amazing. They are not endocrine disruptors. And there's a Shanghai women's study that found a 59% reduction in premenopausal breast cancer. And that in childhood, if your children are consuming about 1.5 servings weekly, that they have a 58% reduction in breast cancer rates as adults. That's huge. That's a gift you can give your kids, right? And most importantly, they found that those with the BRCA gene mutation carriers had a 43% reduction in cancer incidence. So even if you have the gene, right, if you're consuming soy, it's going to significantly reduce your risk of getting breast cancer. There's so much research that backs this up. Soy is so important, even if you've already been diagnosed with cancer. So say you have already been diagnosed, you're in remission right now. That is like, since basically 2009, we haven't had a lot of research. So there's a reason why there was so much misconception, because there just weren't studies available. We were assuming that these isoflavones were going to actually be endocrine disruptors because they do mimic estrogen in your body. And we were assuming that was a bad thing. It wasn't until 2009 that it showed that it is actually a good thing and that it can prevent cancer from forming. If anything, there's a 30 to 60% mortality drop in those who consume soy, right? And that's about a cup or half a cup of soy milk a day, which is barely anything, just a half a cup of soy milk a day. And so, yes, I started eating more tofu and my period stopped. Oh, interesting. So with that, I mean, there's so many other factors that could play a role. I would need to see like what else is going on in that situation and how old you were, all of that. So we'd have to dive deep into that. But in general, when it comes to breast cancer, there's no single human study that says that eating more soy is going to eating more soy is going to increase your risk. In fact, it shows quite the opposite. Soy is not the enemy. There have been no adverse alterations when you consume soy on your thyroid and estrogen, on ovulation, on semen levels in men or in children, on all of the studies that they've done, right? Standardized study. Now, there is something important to notice is that if you're on thyroid medication, you do need to time your intake properly because it can interfere. So if you're on certain medication, just make sure that you're timing your soy properly. But in general, these soy isoflavones are not endocrine disruptors, and it's important for you to understand that. Now, besides soy, what other foods should you be eating to reduce your risk of cancer? And flax seeds, making it a priority to consume flax seeds every day, whether or not you've had cancer or you're worried about getting cancer. Eat flax seeds. Just a tablespoon a day makes a big difference. And the reason why, and more flax seeds than any other seeds like chia seeds or hemp seeds, it's because they have lignans in them, right? And these lignans are incredibly powerful to lower your estrogen, right? To slow abnormal cell growth, inhibit tumor angiogenesis. Remember, like what I said before, there's certain foods that you eat that can prevent the formation of blood vessels around tumors that give tumors the nutrients they need to grow and thrive. When you're consuming flax seeds, it's basically via these endostatins, it's going to tell that the blood vessels stop growing around that tumor, right? That's so powerful to consume flax seeds every day. So 1,122 breast cancer patients were followed up for about 10 years. And when comparing low versus high intakes of lignans, which are found in these flax seeds, there was a 51% reduction in all-cause mortality. So it's not just breast cancer, like all-cause mortality, and a 71% breast cancer specific death decrease. So 71% to decrease the risk of death from breast cancer is huge, and it's cheap and it's easy. I always put my flax seeds in my morning oatmeal. You can put them in a smoothie. You can sprinkle them over a salad. Whenever I make any type of baked good, any type, even if it's a cake, even if it's something crazy sweet that has no nutritional value, why not throw flax seeds in there? You can't even tell. Make sure they're ground up so your body can digest them, but use flax seeds as often as you can. They are so good for you. Remember not to overdo it if you're trying to lose weight. They are very calorie dense, but in general, you want to make them a priority in your diet every single day. Another priority is cruciferous vegetables. We want to be eating more cruciferous vegetables. 5,200 African-American women were followed for 12 years and found that there was a 41% reduction in breast cancer risk by consuming just one serving of cruciferous vegetables daily. So what are cruciferous vegetables? It's going to be bok choy, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, right? They're all those type of vegetables. They're also known to cause gas and bloating. So you want to go slow. You only need a serving a day, right? So just one serving, don't go overboard, especially if you don't want the gas and bloating, you just need one. I put frozen rice cauliflower in my breakfast, my oatmeal breakfast every morning. And it's one and done. It's super easy, right? One of the reasons is most likely from that sulforaphane. Now, sulforaphane is a cancer-fighting, chemical that is made when we are consuming these types of cruciferous vegetables. But this is what's interesting. It is especially concentrated in broccoli sprouts. So if you currently have cancer, if you're fighting cancer, you don't want cancer to come back, I highly suggest that you consume broccoli sprouts every single day. So not only cruciferous vegetables, but you either grow your own broccoli sprouts or buy them. I can buy them at my local grocery store. They do get smelly and stinky over time. So make sure that you store them correctly, but they are so, so, so important. And when it comes to that. Berries are key as well. So berries are basically, they have phytochemicals. It's funny, it's kind of a play on words, phytochemicals, but you can call them phytochemicals because they fight off cancer, they fight off Alzheimer's disease, they fight off so many diseases in your body. We want to make sure we're eating berries every day. Even just the dark purple color or dark red color, that's why it's also in grapes, but it's really good for your brain, but also really good for your breasts. They found in 8,927 breast cancer patients that for every 2 servings of blueberries, there was a 25% reduction in risk in mortality. So trying to consume berries every day. I put frozen blueberries in my oatmeal breakfast every morning. And whenever I have that afternoon slump, I grab some berries, right? So if you're just wanting to snack on something, if you're like emotionally eating, you're bored, you're stressed, grab blueberries. Grab oranges, right? Grab those other things that will actually help you and reduce the stress in your body. Now, one question I asked was, when it comes to soy, what about the soy processed meats? So this is important, actually. I'm glad that this question was asked because it's the full soy, like the very, it's not soy protein isolate does not have the isoflavones that fight breast cancer. Okay, so the soy processed meat, if you were to look at the ingredients and on the back of it, it says soy protein isolate, you're not getting the same benefits. You're not getting the same benefits. So what's the benefit to maybe eating that processed meat, the fake meat, right? Well, you're also not getting the IGF-1, right? You're not getting the other things. It's not necessarily good for you in the sense that tofu would be good for you. There could be it's more neutral in my mind, right? Yes, you're getting more protein. If you're a bodybuilder and you want to avoid, getting your risk of cancer, then I say, okay, every once in a while, yes, eat some of those higher processed meats to meet your goals, but know that it's never going to be as good as just eating tofu or tempeh. Like tempeh is amazing. In fact, fermented soy, like tempeh, and even miso, right? Those actually, your body is able to take those isoflavones and use them even more efficiently. It's even better if you can get it fermented. So that's the ideal. If you're like, I'm not a big soy person, well, you can maybe use a little bit of miso in your next soup, just a spoonful. You won't even taste it. But that can give you a lot of benefit, right? Now, all animal-based foods, even the fancy grass-fed, organic, most humane of all kinds of meat, right? All of it contains saturated fat. All animal-based foods contain heme iron and nitrous compounds that are going to affect your risk of cancer. So it doesn't matter how grass-fed or organic the meat is, it's still going to increase your risk. At a cellular level, all animal-based products contain the ability to elevate your levels of cancer and higher estrogen by IGF-1, insulin, angiogenesis, and inflammation markers. Okay. Additional carcinogens are created from cooking animal-based foods, which I'm going to talk to you in just a second. And then again, it's of course, if you love meat and you want to eat it, the grass-fed organic kind is going to be better because, when it comes to meat, not only are you getting the saturated fat, the heme iron, the trans fat, but if you're eating meat from like fast food restaurant, right, or the agriculturally raised meat, you're also getting hormones, right? You're also getting, basically, a lot of the cows are injected with growth hormones that then you are consuming, and that's also going to promote the growth of cancer. Fish, I wish the fish was clean these days, but it's not as clean as it was, hundreds of years ago. The fish is actually one of the major sources of dioxins, or these are other endocrine disruptors, PCBs, etc. And these hormones, in fact, just your regular cow, that's agriculturally raised, the hormones that they're injecting, just to give you an idea, like it's 1,000 times more powerful at increasing your estrogen levels than BPAs in plastic. Like, we're so worried about plastic, right, and estrogen, and it's 1,000 times more powerful, these hormones that are injected into agriculturally raised meat. So it's key. It's so important to be aware of this, especially if you are at a higher risk, right? Yeah. The collagen supplements, that's a good question. What about collagen supplements? I don't know. Like, I don't know, honestly, the answer to that. What exactly is transformed into collagen supplements, how many of those dioxins, how much of these hormones, get into collagen supplements. I would have to do more research. I don't know if there is much research on it, honestly. But I would have to look into it. That's a really good question. So now, again, this is why I want to just emphasize, it's not just about, grass-fed, really clean meat, because of these HCAs and PAHs. It's how the meat is cooked. If you are smoking meat, if you have a smoker, you are creating carcinogenic compounds in that meat. If you are grilling meat, right, those grill marks, you are creating carcinogenic compounds. Like, anyway, and the thing about processed meats, why deli meats seem so safe and fine, but they went through this process of smoking. They went through this process of being exposed to high temperatures, and it's the smoking of the meat, it's the high temperatures of the meat that's creating these carcinogenic compounds. So if you love your meat and you still want to eat it, like, yes, get the best type of meat you can, pre-cook the meat in the microwave to reduce the time it is in contact with high heat temperatures. You want to really, really try not to overcook that meat. And then if you're grilling it, keep turning the meat side to side over that open flame instead of just flipping it occasionally, because as it's exposed to the higher temperature, it's going to increase those carcinogens. You want to remove any black or charred portions of the meat before consuming it. I used to love the grilled part, the charred, like, I thought it was so good. It adds so much flavor, right? But it's also a carcinogen that you're ingesting. You want to avoid using meat drippings for gravy, because it's the drippings as well, the fat, right, that have those PAHs, that's going to increase your risk. But here's the key. If you really love your meat and still want to eat it, make sure you marinate your meat in spices. Any type of spices work, even just as simple as black pepper, but you need to marinate it before you cook it. That is going to reduce the amount of carcinogens that are formed on the meat, because plants are that powerful. Oregano, turmeric, whatever it is that you're marinating your meat in first, then when you're cooking it, there's going to have a significant lower amount of these HCAs and PAHs. So marinate your meat. Like, that's, if anything you take away from this, it's that. Now, the other question I often get asked is, what about grilled vegetables? They have those char marks. Are those good for, like, are those just as high of a risk? And the truth is, no, they're not. HCAs and PAHs are a much higher risk. They're not healthy for you. They're not good for you, no question. But HCAs are the result of a specific recipe of amino acids and creatine, which is a combination you won't find on vegetables, right? PAHs are the result of the fat drippings, which are also not formed on vegetables. However, they can form carcinogens, right, which are similar to like cigarette smoke in that sense, but it's at a much lower amount. Like, in general, it's not going to be as carcinogenic as the charred marks on meat. It's not great for you, but it's not putting you at as high of a risk as the char marks on meat. Also, keep this in mind when we're consuming so much meat. And again, I'm not for or against a specific diet. I'm just telling you the information. But when you're focusing more on getting all of that animal protein in your body, what are you missing? you're not getting enough vitamin C. You're not getting enough minerals like calcium and potassium. You're not getting enough phytonutrients that are going to fight the cancer. You're not getting enough water, and you're not getting enough fiber. I haven't talked about fiber yet, but fiber is only comes from plants. And when you eat fiber, your microbiome produces what's called short chain fatty acids like acetate, propionate, and butyrate. And these short chain fatty acids go throughout your whole body and they fight off cancer, among many other things. They fight off diabetes. They reduce your risk of heart disease. All of these things, fiber is key. We need to make sure we're eating enough fiber and getting all of these foods in. But the next question is, but what about protein? Am I going to get enough protein if I'm not really eating as much animal protein, right? If I'm not getting enough meat, am I going to be protein deficient? Am I going to go to the doctor and they're going to, something going to happen? And truthfully, no, you'll be fine. It's actually always a win when you swap out animal-based protein sources in your diet for plant-based protein. It's always a win. Even if you come away from this presentation and you're like, okay, I'm just going to start with meatless Mondays. Just start with meatless Mondays. Because just doing that one little thing, one meal a week, 3% of the animal protein you used to be eating is now being swapped out with plant protein. Making that one tiny change decreases your risk of dying from all causes, not just breast cancer, all causes by 10%. Swapping out 3% of your animal protein for plant protein decreases your risk of dying from all causes by 10%, right? So it's always a win the closer you can get. It's always a win when you can add more plants to your body because you're turning your body and your blood into a cancer fighting machine. So how much protein do you really need? Well, the RDA for protein suggests that it's about 0.36 grams per pound of body weight, which for the average woman is going to be about 50 grams of protein a day. Now, people will say, but the RDA is the minimum. I don't want to give my body the minimum. I want to go above. And the truth is the RDA is not the minimum. The RDA is 2 standard deviations above the estimated average requirement. So the requirement, the estimated average requirement, right? The average requirement for individuals, the RDA is 2 standard deviations above that. So if you're hitting the RDA, which is 0.36 grams of protein per pound of body weight, you are going to be fine. You will thrive. You will honestly thrive because you're not only getting the protein you need, but you're also getting all these other antioxidants as you're eating more whole plant food. But if you're curious, now I told you to avoid like the more processed type of meat. Seitan is not considered one of them. Textured vegetable protein is not considered one of them. They're basically just different forms of more whole plant food, kind of like tofu, but a little like it's like tofu's cousin. Think of it as tofu's cousin. What I'm talking about is like the Impossible Burger or, the meatballs you buy at the store, which I use occasionally, but not regularly. Like we want to make sure that we're eating these whole plant foods. So again, it's when you choosing a food that the protein source is soy protein isolate, you're not getting the benefits of the isoflavones. Nuts and seeds, right? They're higher in fat, but they also have 7 to 10 grams of protein. Green peas, 1 cup of green peas has 8 grams of protein. Lentils also are amazing, right? Lentils have 1 cup of lentils is 18 grams of protein. I like to look at it as like a tablespoon of lentils. So basically every tablespoon you put into your mouth is a gram of protein. Like there's so much protein in lentils. I use them all the time. I was even saying on social media, I didn't even know what lentils were like 15 years ago. I had no idea. I'd never cooked with lentils. I never tried lentils. I didn't know what they were and now I use them at least 3 times a week. We love lentils. Lentils are smaller beans, so they're also going to cause less gas and bloating. So if you have gas issues, bloating issues, that's an easy way to start. Quinoa is great. It's about 7 to 9 grams of protein for every half cup cooked. Remember, if you look at it this way, like it doesn't mean that you have to have a major source of protein in, like, say you're using lentils, but you're also having quinoa and you also have, some cashews on top with some green peas, right? So the combination of all of these things, you're going to get plenty of protein. It doesn't mean you have to have one particular protein source. What's the cool thing about plant foods is they all actually have protein in them as well. And then, of course, tempeh, tofu, edamame have 20 grams of protein for a half a cup, which is a lot, right? A peanut butter sandwich, heck, has 20 grams of protein because the bread has protein, the peanut butter has protein. There's so many other options. Beans in general, for 1 cup, you get 15 grams of protein. Wild rice, you get 6.5 grams of protein. There's a lot of protein options like steel cut oats, right? They're 5 grams of protein. So it's pretty hard as long as you're eating enough calories, it's pretty hard to be protein deficient. Even right now, I'm trying to eat in a calorie deficit I have some body recomp goals that I'm working on, and I'm getting even at a deficit, so 200 calories below what my body normally eats, I'm still getting 60 to 70 grams of protein. And the only thing I do is I just make sure to eat tofu once a day. That's it, right? So it's really can be a lot easier than you think. Now, if you currently have cancer, if you're fighting cancer, if you want more resources on cancer, again, I love Christy Funk's work, and she has this cancer fighting smoothie recipe on her website that I'll show you. But basically, it has all the things in it. It has soy, cruciferous vegetables, berries, fiber, flaxseed, turmeric, aloe vera, green tea, almond powder, and other optional add-ins. You can get the recipe for that at pinklotus.com. And she has a lot of information and free resources on her website too. She's done a really great job to put a lot of things together. And then again, you always want to add in the turmeric, the red grapes, right? Omega-3 fatty acids, the berries, the tomatoes, the soy. It's all about what you're adding in, not necessarily about what you're taking away. So the takeaways from all this is I want you to focus on more whole plant foods, right? Add in those vegetables, the fruits, the whole grains, the legumes, the soy, the flaxseed, right? All of those things to reduce your risk of breast cancer. Make a conscious effort to cut back on your animal-based intake, especially red and processed meat, right? That's going to put you at the highest risk when it comes to cancer. Doing this will easily cut back your intake of saturated fats, simple sugars, carbs, highly processed foods, right? We're always talking about you need to stop eating processed foods. And if our focus is more on adding in those good foods, the whole grains, the vegetables, the fruits, if that's your focus, then you'll be able to experience the full benefit without feeling like you're sacrificing anything. Now, don't forget, I have a gift for you. So if you just hang with me for 3 more minutes as I explain the next portion, I do have an entire recipe book with 40 plant-based recipes for you if you stay until the very end, just until we have questions, and then I'll go through any other questions you might have too. Now, I have a question for you. This is only the tip of the iceberg. Right? I was able to teach you these things, but I have so much more, so much more to show you, to just blow your mind, to open up, what can be possible. And if you really think about it, if you right now were to catch a vision, just maybe a 10-second vision of your future, what it's going to be like when you're 80, 90 years old, and you see that you're in a lot of pain, you're suffering with disease, if you could get that glimpse now, and if you are like, okay, what could I do right now in my life to prevent that from happening? Showed you that, would you be willing to make that change, right? Would you be willing to really reduce that future from happening? And if so, I want to show you how. I want to show you how these simple changes can help set you up for the greatest of health in your 80s and your 90s. It's worth it, right? Right now, you were given a lot of information and you may feel like you're super optimistic, you're going to make these changes, but we live in a world that is centered on animal protein. If you follow any fitness individual, any of them, and they're going to be like, my perfect breakfast this morning is my egg McMuffin, right? That has ham and has all these things. And my cancer trigger is turned on, right? And you're going to think maybe it's not that big of a deal. Everyone's eating like this. But here's the thing, if you're eating the standard American diet, you're getting the standard American diseases, which is heart disease number 1, and then cancer is number 2. And so right now you're going to try and make these changes, but you're going to kind of recognize that it gets hard and you're going to hit this valley of despair. And most people, when they hit the valley of despair, they give up, never mind, change my mind. And maybe they join a different program and they have this uninformed optimism. They're like, I'm going to change. And then they're like, never mind, it's hard, right? In order to get out of the valley of despair, you need a team. You need help. You need someone at the bottom with you, pushing you up, pulling you up, or, someone at number 4, just giving you a ladder, helping you, show you the way. It's so much harder to do this on your own. And that's why I've created a membership. It's what I wish I had after my husband had his stroke and I knew that we needed to make a change to our diet. I wish I had this type of support. And so we have the Empowered by Plants membership. What the membership is it's a weekly cooking video demonstration that teaches you the how. Tonight I talked all about the why. This is why you should eat this way. But now you're gonna be like, but how? How do I make breakfast? How do I make lunch without lunch meat? How do I make dinner? What do I do instead? And we've got you covered. We have weekly cooking classes that are not only recorded, we also have live cooking classes that you can join. I give you monthly masterclasses where you can dive deeper into the why, into understanding, because it's like monkey see, monkey do. I always tell people we have these things called mirror neurons in our head, and we're just going to have these goals. Like, I want to eat healthier, I want to do better. But if you're surrounded by people who are not eating this way, if you're surrounded by people who are doubting the way you're eating or questioning because they love their meat, then you're going to doubt yourself. But if you continually feed yourself the information, be in a membership where people are doing this, where you don't feel like the odd man out, then you'll be able to keep going, because it's monkey see, monkey do. So you need to focus your vision to help you actually act out on what you need. And that's included. We have monthly mindset question and answers where we have a group call where you tell me how you're doing. What are you struggling with? What do you need help with? How can I support you? Right? We have that group call every single month where you sit down on the call with me. We have recorded and live Pilates classes. I am actually a Pilates instructor, and so part of that is just a bonus. We have meal planning classes that help you know exactly, what to cook. We have small group accountability pods. And we have a really cool no recipe cookbook so that you can learn how to cook this way. It's like, what do I make for dinner tonight? I don't know, where to start. And we teach you how to cook without a recipe, especially when you're not forming your meals around animal products, right? Like you used to do in the past, you could just cook chicken, potatoes, and, and veggies, right? Broccoli. So what would you do now instead? This no recipe cookbook walks you through it. Then we have our emotional eating reset, which is an incredible value. We also, with that, have a strong core and healthy gut bonus course as well. And we help you if your goal is to lose weight. We have a whole section on weight loss, but if your goal is just to prevent cancer, we help you there too. I recognize that a lot of people want to lose weight when it comes to eating this way. So I've given you the tools and the help, but most importantly, the emotional help, because success is 20% strategy and 80% mindset. That's what Tony Robbins said. It is all about the mindset and getting yourself in the right place. And so all of this is easily valued at over $2,000. And, that doesn't even include my bonus gifts, right? My 3-day weight loss challenge that's included. My other bonus gift I'm going to give you is where we are, talking about all these other previous workshops that I've done with your skin, how to feed your skin, how to, improve your gut health, how to build a strong core, all of these previous bonus workshops that are also going to be thrown into the program. Now, the value of all of this is easily over $2,000. And I want you to think about it right now. If this helped to, prevent traumatic health events in the future, would it be worth it? Would it be worth it if it could just save you from going through cancer, save you from going through heart disease? If it could save you from the top killers and death, would it be worth it? Like, heck yes, if you could avoid that future. But don't worry, I am not going to charge $2,000. And in the past, I found that I just tell people about my membership, I'm like, hey, join for a month. That's great. But people need commitment. And I know that it takes more than just 30 days to make a solid change. We need 12 weeks together in order for you to see a change, in order for you to establish habits, in order for you to actually feel like you can do this. Not just 30 days, not just, 2 weeks, right? We need 12 weeks together. And in 12 weeks, we can get you the transformation that you want. This is not just a transaction. This is a transformation. And so if you join today with this special offer, it's only $74. It's me giving you a month free in our membership when you commit to 3 months. And then if you feel like you've gotten exactly what you needed, like you're in a good state, you're in a good, you feel like you can eat plant-based, you're welcome to cancel. But a lot of people actually love our book club that we have inside our membership. They love the community. They love that they can ask questions anytime, that my team and I are right there to help you. And so a lot of people choose to stay longer. And if you choose to stay longer on our website, when I offer my membership, it's $47 a month. But with this special offer, it's only $37 a month after that. So I'm going to not only save you by you get a month free, but I also save you $10 every month if you sign up with this special link. Now, this is only available until the end of October. And so I'm going to give you that link in just a second, but I want to remind you, this isn't a cost, it's an investment. This is your future. Like, would you make these changes now if you knew that you could prevent cancer in the future? Just these small little things. And as a bonus, you will save money, because meat and cheese is so expensive that vegetarians on average spend $750 less on groceries per person per year. Per person. Do you know how many thousands of dollars of money I save because we eat lentils for dinner. You know, it's like, it's amazing. It's helping our long-term health, right? And it's saving us money. And my whole family, right? All 6 of us. So it's all 6 of my kids and my husband and I. This will help you save money and prevent the costs from all these future doctor's appointments, you know, and all the trauma by eating in the right way. And I know this because it's happened to my other clients. As Jess said, PlantWise saved me. She was diagnosed with colon cancer. Her grocery bills are lower right now because she's eaten plant-based. We were able to help her fight cancer. She's now cancer-free, and she has been given so much support. We're all about the 90-10 approach. I don't ask for perfection. Plant-based is not perfect. And so we give you some flexibility. Like I said, I taught you how to eat meat if you still want to eat it. I want you to have that flexibility so you feel like you can live this lifestyle into your 80s, into your 90s. And I remember when I met Joelle, she was like, give me the meat. Like, a meal isn't a meal without the meat, right? And then after just 3 weeks of switching to a plant-based diet, her eczema completely cleared up, right? Her skin is thanking her. She realized it's not just like, you know, you're not just eating like a rabbit, you're just eating a lot more plants. And she was experiencing different type of foods like Ethiopian food, Nigerian food, all these other foods that she really didn't experience before. And then more than anything, Erin, who had, you know, a lot other struggles, that she said that PlantWise was the key in overcoming each struggle she had, you know, and they didn't go away necessarily, but we provided everything that she needed to overcome them. So again, other clients who've dealt with cancer have found that it's just switching the focus from cutting out the bad foods to instead putting in the good foods was everything. It made it so much easier and doable, right? So again, you're going to get all of these things, including our book club, including our live cooking class, our recording cooking class, our no recipe cookbook, our emotional eating reset, our weight loss, you know, our weight loss course, our healthy gut, strong core course, all of these things for not $2,000, but for just $75 when you commit to 3 months. So right now you have 2 choices. You can do nothing. And if you do nothing, nothing will change, or you can sign up, because when you pay for things, you start to pay attention, you commit. And that's why I'm asking for that 3-month commitment. So in summary, let's set you up for success. You can try to do this alone, right? Or you can join a team with a support system to get all the help you need. So let me go ahead and I'm going to answer questions and then give you that free cookbook in just a second. I'm just going to stop my share and get that link really quick for you so that you have it. Let me know if you have any questions. And if you're in the membership already too, I would love for you to share with others, you know, what benefit you found from being part of a team. I know a lot of you guys, because in the membership, you get the access to all of the recordings. So a lot of the times they just watch the recordings later, but it's still so beneficial. All right, let me switch over. Okay, so here is there you go. That is the checkout link. And then any questions. So what questions do you have? I want to just take a second to go through your questions, and then I will send that link to. Let me actually get that link ready. Here is the free. So this is the free recipe book for sticking around. Right there. Perfect. Check out free recipe book. Okay, if taking thyroid meds first thing in the morning, when is the best time to eat soy? So you wouldn't want to eat soy with the meds. That's the thing. You just need to allow some time in between. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This means a lot. Yeah, any other questions on breast cancer, on eating plant-based, on the membership, on the program, on anything there? Yay. Thank you guys. You're so sweet. Awesome. I know I don't want to keep you too late. So if you don't have any questions, you're welcome to hop off. I'll stay for another 5 minutes if there's any other questions, but make sure I will send the recording. If you missed a part of it, I'll send the recording tonight. I'll also send the link to our special deal that we're offering until the end of October. Thank you, Ruth. Guys, thank you so much. Cool. Well, if there's no questions, feel free to, write me a little message if you have anything in specific with you. But other than that, I will go ahead and end that recording.